Imagine this. You've been working on Wall Street as a trader for nearly a decade. You went to a prestigious school, and your first job out of college was to work on Wall Street. And you know that if you stay on your current track for the next decade, you're set for life. Your entire world revolves around high finance. Your friends, your family, everyone that you know also works in finance. But one day you decide to pull the plug completely and go down a completely different path of entrepreneurship and trying to build your own business. You're building in a space that you've never built in before. You have no experience in it, and it takes you 3 years to even see a single dollar. That's exactly the path that Adam Robinson took. Now, 15 years later, he's running a $20 million business that's completely bootstrapped with a team of only 6 people. And in this episode, we dive into Adam's unique story and why communication is actually the skill that's been the biggest unlock to his success. You won't want to miss this one. Let's get into it. Awesome. So today we've got Adam Robinson on the podcast. Adam, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I'm ready to go.
Let's do it. So Adam, for the people that are new to you and have never met you before, in 30 seconds, can you just give the quick rundown on who you are, what you do, what you're working on?
Sure. My name's Adam Robinson. I'm a B2B SaaS founder. I have 2 companies. One's called retention.com, and that business sells into mainly big Shopify stores and publishers. I have another one called RB2B. We sell into B2B, mostly, SaaS and digital marketing agencies. Both products, the core tech is on website identity resolution. So like somebody can hit the site, leave without filling out a form, and we can sort of do a bunch of things to figure out who that person probably is. And then it fuels, sales and marketing use cases on both sides. So I post a lot on LinkedIn. It's the only source of demand for the B2B product, which is kind of amazing because it's almost at 8 million ARR after 2 years, and we have 2 people working on it. So it just kind of shows you the power of what that can be if the alignment's right, which I'm sure we're going to get into later. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I talk about bootstrapping because I just feel like, if you can do it for long enough, it's the reason you started a business in the first place. There's a path to freedom there that is of much higher probability than taking venture funding. And the whole kind of idea is that venture pushes businesses to be bigger than they should be in most cases. Whereas there's really nothing wrong with a 25 or 30 million ARR business if you run it correctly. That could be like it could create a wonderful life for somebody. Totally unacceptable in the venture world, right? So anyway, that's the summary of me as a public figure. Put it that way.
Incredible. So Adam, have you always been an entrepreneur, or let's go a little bit further back? Because I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, you used to work in finance.
I did.
Bring us back to the early days.
Yeah, I graduated from Rice University in 2003. At that time, there were some people starting startups, but there were not a lot of people starting startups. The thing that kids did who got good grades in college was they tried to work at Boston Consulting Group, Bain, or McKinsey, or they went and worked at Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers, or Morgan Stanley. So I went and worked at Lehman Brothers in Manhattan. I actually lasted there a really long time. I was a credit default swap trader. And
Wow.
yeah, trading credit default swaps at Lehman for 10 years. So, but the interesting thing was my original roommates in Manhattan were actually one of the few people who were starting startups. They created this startup called Vimeo in this apartment I was living in, a video sharing website. So I got an exposure to this world of young people doing cool things with tech, and kind of really related to the Jeff Bezos argument that it's always day one, right? Like it just seemed like 10 years into credit default swap trading, I just thought that those guys were getting more out of their lives than I was. And yeah, I quit. I got on this incredibly long and winding road to becoming a tech entrepreneur, having no idea what the hell that even meant. And I'd save some money trading, and then finally, I would say 3 years later, we launched a product and got paid our first dollar. 5 years later, I started paying myself a small salary, and then now it's great. And that was so, but this is 15 years in at this point from
Mm.
when I left finance. But yeah, I'm very glad I did.
That's fascinating. And it's funny that you mention, what the smart kids would do is they'd go into either consulting or finance. And um, you know, Daniel works at Bain. I started at the Boston Consulting Group. So there's
Yeah.
probably something that we can learn from you here. It's interesting that you also mentioned it took about 3 years before you started making your first dollars. So you obviously glossed over it, but I think there's definitely an element of sticking with it for quite some time, especially when you're bootstrapping and you're not, venture funded. Um, what was it like in those early days when you were just starting out building the business?
So I would say, there's this amazing meme on the internet that's like self-confidence versus time as an entrepreneur. And like it starts close to the y-axis, then like drops in your first 2 years to 0, and then very, very, very slowly builds up over the next like 10 or 20 years, right? And I think that is very symbolic of most people's journey who are successful in like a radical career transition. Because it's not like I went and started a startup trading platform. You know what I mean? Like nothing that I knew from my prior life applies to what I do now. Zero. There's no management training, trading. There's no product. It's literally just like you sit in front of these screens and try to figure this game out. If you make a lot of money in this game, we'll pay you a lot. If you don't, then we're going to fire you and put somebody else in the seat. And that's management, right? Like there's no, it's just wild. Like, how, in many ways that's an entrepreneurial job, but like, it's just nothing to do with like creating products and marketing them and like building teams, which is like what I do now. So yeah, anytime, but it's an amazing thing to do for yourself when you're like 30 to like completely reinvent yourself and rebuild your identity, like as a human being. Like it's a tremendous growth opportunity for anyone who's, bold enough to do it. I mean, I wasn't married, didn't have a kid. Like I didn't get married till I was 40, didn't have any kids at the time. If it were right now, I just literally wouldn't do it. Like it would be impossible to put my family in that situation, knowing what I know about like how hard it is to like to start from zero. I mean, now I'm not starting from zero anymore. When I do something new, like I have a platform, I have a team, I have like whatever, this prior skill, but, man, it's really hard. Starting from zero is incredibly difficult. So yeah, it was horrible. But somehow, I mean, you said it right. And I had friends who commented this over the years. Like I just had unbelievable stick to itiveness. And it's like the first business I started was not great. It was like an email newsletter app that was very much this like customer acquisition arbitrage. We sort of figured out how to figure out who the biggest email vendors' customers were before Built With and Data Nyze existed. So it was like this web scraper play. And it only got us to 3 million in revenue, but we had some tiny team. So it was like profitable, but it was stuck. And it was stuck for like 3 years after having like a nice pop in the beginning. And that is a surprisingly miserable place to be. In the world of like downtown Manhattan, like people are super motivated by their jobs. Everyone's being successful around you. To have like a tiny startup that you can't figure out how to grow totally sucks. And, each thing that we have started has sort of added on to the last. And like now it's fantastic. But it was a very, the point of all that is like, incredibly long and winding road getting there, you know?
Hmm. Did you have a co-founder in these businesses that you were running, or were you
Yep.
running them solo?
Yep. Co-founder, co-founders, 2 on the first one, The second one, I had two, but it was one of them was different than the first one. Um, and the third business is RB2B, but like it's kind of like a product line, like it's not a separate team and cap table. Like the first one was kind of a totally different deal. Um, but yeah, I got
Yeah.
co-founders.
Fascinating. So many different directions that we could take this. One of the things that I've noticed, though, Adam, from just talking with you for the last 10 or so minutes, is that you are a great communicator and you're a great storyteller. And obviously, you also post a lot online. And one of the things that Daniel and I are both really fascinated by and a little bit obsessed by is how leaders and founders and great communicators, how they operate. And in a way, it feels like posting on social media is being good at it is also being good at communicating, because you're just transmitting your ideas through a different medium than, say, an in-person conversation or like a presentation or a meeting. And it's just, you've got to just be aware of the constraints of, say, posting on LinkedIn versus posting on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. So I'm curious for you, how has your idea of what good communication looks like changed over time as you built these businesses?
So this is there's two things I'm going to talk about. The first thing is unrelated to posting on social media, but it's probably the most impactful thing that I've ever decided to do. So I started working with an executive coach 2 years ago and got all my exec team working with him also. And almost entirely everything that he helps us with is communication. Specifically, and this sounds so simple, but if you're just an entrepreneurial person who is not trained in bending your communication habits this way, it's like being very clear on expectations, being very clear on deliverables, being very clear on managing 100% of commitments made. Like these very basic concepts, if you are even a little bit sloppy with them, basically lead to all of the problems in your organization, which is fascinating if you don't have an organization. Or it's fascinating if someone hasn't pointed it out to you that basically all your problems are related to those things, right? So I would call that management communication, and it's something that I was completely unskilled in a few years ago. And mind you, I had been running my business for 12 years at that point, right? And everyone who's ever worked for me would say, I'm just, the people who worked well for me didn't need to be managed at all. They just like did their job great, exactly how, a perfect employee for me was like someone I never had to talk to, right? Like that's not scalable because those people are very hard to find, right? So a much easier person to find is like a driven and talented person that you can like clearly communicate expectations and deliverables to about like what you want, right? So that's thing number one. And now social media, I think, is like a bit different than clarity of communication as it pertains to employee. I believe that no matter what the format of a of content is, whether it's a long form blog post or an Instagram short, it comes down to a hook that's a pattern interrupt, some sort of body. A good format is the world is broken, here's how it got fixed. Then some sort of close that gives the reader or observer or watcher some sort of dopamine that will inspire them to engage with that post. That is what I believe a good piece of online media is. Um, I learned that through posting on LinkedIn extensively. Um, I work with a consultant who's like works with most of the big B2B SaaS voices. And he helps with idea generation, meet with them once a week for an hour. It's kind of like, what worked last week? Like, what have you seen that's interesting? What should we write about? And regardless of how good a post is that I think I've come up with, if we can't come up with what the hook is for that post, I don't write it, because it just doesn't matter. It will not get distribution if people are not clicking see more on LinkedIn. It won't go anywhere. Dead in the water. So there's no point. If the point of, for me, if the point on posting on social media is to have top of funnel brand reach for my B2B product, it's very different than like an encyclopedic sort of like the nature of social media is just that it's always funneling through, right? It's not like a blog where like you go read Paul Graham's essay and the first sentence might suck, but it's Paul Graham's essay, so like I'm going to finish it. Like that's just not what social media is. So in my wife's a ceramicist, she wanted to start chronicling her uh the pieces she's making, right? In order to like sort of generate demand for these things like through her network and very manually get people to follow her. And she was talking to me about it, and I was like, I think these 60-minute things about your pieces should have a hook, a middle, and then a close. And like the second she started doing that, people started coming to her and being like, oh man, your stories are so good. Your Instagram stories, not, you know what I mean? About just like making this base or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's really important for people to think about social content that way. Like the hook. So like one more idea, one more thing about this hook thing, right? Like uh back in the days of newspapers, a journalist would spend 50% of their time on an article writing the headline of that article. 50%. That was like
Wow.
what their job was, right? And like it's equally as important on social media to have that pattern interrupt, or no one's gonna like stop scrolling and like read your thing. So I'm not saying that you should spend 50% of your time on the hook. I'm saying you should spend a lot of effort trying to make that hook as good as possible. Um, so so yeah, and then there's something. So yeah, we can pause right there.
Okay. Yeah. This is fascinating, Adam. I want to go back to
Hey
that
man,
first.
I've done a lot of social media content very, very effectively. So I'm highly skilled at this and at this thing we're talking about. So um,
That's perfect. I want to go back to that first idea, though, that you talked about before the social media communication aspect of it. But the management communication, I think, is what you called it.
yeah,
And you said something that I want to dig into, which is poor or unclear communication when you're a business leader or you're founder or an executive managing a team leads to most of the problems in your organization. Can we just can you just elaborate on that?
yeah, for sure. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So prior to working with this executive coach, my co-founders and I would hire people. And then for most people, we'd be like, they just don't get it. And for some people, it'd be like, they're awesome. They get it. Right. I think that's a very common thing for people who are not good at managing other people to feel about people you hire. And then you read this stuff about A players and not A players and what, all this stuff. And you're like, well, okay, I just have like one A player and like everybody else kind of doesn't get it, but like, whatever, that's just like the org. Um, and I just think until you have like learned the skill, so we can pause there. And like, if you're a founder and you're listening to this and you're nodding, which like a lot of founders I have spoken to have definitely fallen into that. It's kind of like you're spraying, praying and hiring. And like every once in a while you get someone amazing. And like everybody else, you kind of like, you just can't really get them to do what you think they should do. Uh, and that's just being a bad manager. It's hard to like for highly successful people, I think, to admit that they're bad at things, but like I think it's very easy to be a bad manager. And like unless you have like either spent a lot of time under a good manager, which I had never had, or you've just been trained to communicate really well in this way. Um, I think it's a skill that needs to be learned, and in communication, so like we're communicating our whole lives. Like your habits are so bad typically that they need to undergo a major change in order to really communicate effectively, right? Um,
Right.
a major problem we hadn't had. Yeah. Okay. So dive into this. Yeah. Ask away.
No, not to interrupt you, but you said something which struck me, and I think it to me it feels like, and I've run into this problem myself as like an early stage founder right now. I'm running a content agency. It's a service business. We create content for founders, and I've run into this issue of hiring, and I've realized how big of a challenge it is. So this really resonates with me, and it's like doing a good job at the service or the product that you're selling is very different from managing the team that you probably need to put in place so that you're not constantly doing the job, or in my case, being stuck in the fulfillment.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different skill, is what I'm hearing.
Uh, yes. Yeah. Like, baking an apple pie and then like hiring and like managing people to make apple pies on your behalf are two completely unrelated things. It's just, well, one is a technical issue and the other is like a human. It's a human issue and a communication issue and like, a training issue and all of that. They have nothing to do with each other, in my opinion. Like you probably wouldn't be starting a content business unless you were good at it technically and like could teach what you know to other people. But beyond that, they're totally unrelated. There's nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. I think a lot of founders get into a specific business or specific area because they are very good at that thing. And then they quickly realize, oh, running a business is it's a very different set of skills than just being good at the thing that I was originally doing. Which is really interesting to me that what you said earlier was the space that you had entered was very different from what you previously were working on at Lehman, credit default swap trading, completely different world. So it's interesting to me that you picked a direction that was very different at the time for you, but you still are obviously now an expert in the field. It just took a little bit longer.
But like anybody, so like this quote, I don't know whose quote this is. Uh, I've heard Jeff Bezos say it, but like people wildly overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and wildly underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. Like you can be an expert in anything in a decade. Anything. You can become a rocket scientist in a decade. Elon Musk has proven that, right? Like, so yes, I am an expert now, but like I cannot stress the importance of relentless dedication for a decade and a half. Like it did not start there. I did not even really know that I was going into an area that I knew nothing about. Wall Street has an interesting way of like giving you this false confidence in yourself because you're like, the value of a human being in Wall Street is perceived as the amount of money they're extracting from the system. So if you like make a lot of money on Wall Street, you're like, well, I make a lot of money. So I'm like the man, I can do anything, which may be true. But the reality is it's probably true that you could do anything in 10 years and you think that you could do anything in 1 year, and that 9-year difference is very trying. It's tough.
So along that long journey, when did you start posting on LinkedIn?
October or November of 2022. I thought that I
Wow.
had in the retention.com, I thought I had a unicorn on my hands. Like I could walk up to a Shopify store owner, say what we did. They would immediately be like, I need that. And we were like closing a 30K deal in 7 days with an 80% close rate. So this insane product market fit paradigm. Turns out we were overselling everybody too. It was absolutely horrible when it unwound. But I was like, I need to create an awareness for this. I wasn't on social media in my personal life. I had not posted on LinkedIn ever. I'm like, what's the quickest way to create awareness for something? Without question, now and then, it is to build a personal profile on social media, because people are on social media to connect with people, not brands. So yeah, I like started what was a really long and hard journey of trying to figure out how to create organic social media content. And it basically took about a year to like really find my voice. You know, it's another very hard thing. And that's not even the extent of it. I had been very interested in video, in this idea that like video scales itself with this like incredible power, like the talking head.
Sure.
Like if you can get people to listen to you about anything for a long period of time, they will either hate you pretty quickly or they're just going to agree with everything you say. Like I've just seen it happen to myself, you know? So I got interested in that idea in like 2017 or 18. I made it work really well on the launch of my second business with a paid ads campaign that like got it off the ground and was incredible for 6 months and then sort of stopped working. It was on Meta. But I had never tapped into the organic social thing. And LinkedIn was like the first foray into that.
That's fascinating. So, I mean, just for context, LinkedIn as a platform, I'm pretty sure was launched in 2002. So you were an early user of the platform. At the time,
22 is my first business.
22.
4 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Misspoke
Like
there.
2.5 years ago.
Okay. So
Yeah.
then 2022 is when you start building your personal brand.
Yeah.
It's been about 4 years since that time, give or take, and you've grown obviously a significant amount on the platform. You mentioned it took you a while, maybe a year or so, to find your voice. What was that process like? And do you have any advice for people that are starting out now that want to find that voice?
Yeah, I do. It was horrible. I did not know why I was writing what I was writing, which like, I'm sure if you start posting on social media because someone's like, oh, you should, it's amazing. Like you're going to feel the same way. And this was 10 years into my entrepreneurial career. So like, at this point, you know, most of the things I do, I know why I'm doing them. I accept the fact that they could be wrong. It's like, oh, I want to like make like a, consumer like ad funnel for this B2B product. Like I know why I want to do that because it's like an ARB on Facebook. It could not work for B2B, but like I want to try it. Like I know why. I didn't know why I was writing what I was writing for the first year, which really bothered me. Um, and interestingly, was I was posting a smattering of stuff, like there's this idea of content pillars, which when you start posting, if you like sort of like read any instruction on what you should be doing, um, like, oh, like, come up with your content pillars. I mean, the problem with that is like a pillar only becomes a pillar if it's something you want to write about and it actually resonates with your audience. That's what they're not telling you about in these LinkedIn courses, right? Like you need to find you need to co-create your pillars with the audience, right? Like, but you need to start somewhere. So it's like, come up with a few things that you think might resonate with people. So, one of my pillars, I had like, as a SaaS founder, there have been a couple guys who did a very bad job at building in public up until I started doing it in 2022. There was a guy, Nathan Barry. That was really it. But like he posts like once a month. And no, there was actually, it was the guy SEO Moz, Rand Fishkin, also built in public, but like nobody else. And I would soak up every single word that they would write with such incredible desire because I perceived these guys as way beyond, I was stuck at 3 million ARR. These guys were at 20, 30, 50, whatever, right? So like, I just thought that they knew everything and they had all the answers to my problems, right? So I would soak up every single word. I knew, so I'm like, I'm going to create a personal brand for myself. We were at 13 million ARR with 6 people. I'm like, I at least know that whatever I write, everybody under 5 million ARR is going to be all over this because they want to be at 13 million ARR with 6 people. They're going to listen to every single fucking word I say. So like, that was like content pillar number 1. And then I tried to like create, this was for Shopify stores, and we had like an email related product. So my ghostwriter was like, which I was using at the time. I do not anymore. I read all my LinkedIn posts. So he was like, yeah, we'll do like 60% e-com email related content and 40% sort of like SaaS build in public content. And the idea was even the e-com stores kind of cared about SaaS stuff because they all wanted to be a SaaS entrepreneur. And we shared, we all fire people, we all make money and lose money and like whatever else. So there were common threads, right? So 2 things. Number 1, I didn't understand why somebody would value my e-com related content because I was not an e-com store owner or agency. I wasn't in the e-com business. I was hugely conflicted about this. So, and then the other thing that was interesting to me is whenever I wrote about the SaaS stuff, I get like 10 times the engagement from other SaaS founders, but not e-com people. Right? So like ultimately it got so wild. Like I like, there was this time in 2023 over Labor Day. 2023 was a very interesting year for SaaS. It was like the year that hiring a BDR to sit at a computer and like hit send on SalesLoft or whatever stopped working to book demos. Like that was 2023. Before that, you could just like put these college kids in front of a laptop and they would just like book demos with these spamming platforms. So it stopped working, but like no one had like admitted that to themselves yet, So I like made this post about how BDR was broken and everybody that I was talking to was like, didn't know if their BDRs were like profitable anymore or whatever. And it was like very precise, like these comments that were coming in. And like an average post about e-com stuff was like 35 likes. I posted this thing about BDR. And I was also like, we let go of our BDR team and like our growth sped up. Here's like the 8 things people are talking about. It was like 3,000 likes, and like hundreds of comments on LinkedIn. Yeah. So I was like, shit. And then I wrote 2 more that night and they both were like over 1,000 like bangers or whatever. And then I went to Alec, my consult. I had switched to write my own post and I was working with this guy who I still work with, Alec. And I was like, dude, like, I think I'm going to just like only write about B2B for a while and see how this goes. And like my follower growth was like this. And then I started writing about B2B and it literally went just like straight. It went from like took a year to get 20,000 followers. I went from 20 to 40 in a week. Wild.
Wow.
So I'm like, and I think the reason why was I was providing an unbelievable, at this point, I'm at like 20 million ARR doing this build in public stuff, providing an unbelievable amount of transparency about my business. And then B, I'm like talking about these issues that like you probably would only talk about to like your spouse behind closed doors. Like,
Sure.
what are the implications of like the entire SDR machine not working for SaaS anymore? Lots of people are going to be out of jobs. Like it's things that are like, so anyway, yeah. And then strangely, we didn't have a B2B product at the time. The content was so good and I felt like I could just write it forever. And it's, 2 years later and I'm still doing it. That I was like, we should create a product for these people. Like what we do for e-com doesn't exist for B2B. Like there were only these like company level ID solutions for B2B. It's like, we should make a person level ID solution for B2B. And there you go. Launched it March of 2024. Not quite 2 years old. Almost 8 million ARR. It's me and 2 other people. There you go.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And Just taking a step back from all the details, Adam, like for the people that don't know what the ecom product was for retention.com or what the B2B product is for our B2B, can you just explain in like fifth grader terms what
Yeah.
exactly the products do?
So if I'm Warby Parker, I put a pixel on my website, and when someone visits my website and doesn't fill out a form, that pixel matches them to a person in our identity graph, and we give Warby Parker a deliverable email address. Warby Parker emails them. Does that make sense?
Makes complete
Yeah,
sense.
very similar product on the B2B side, except we resolve to a LinkedIn URL and push it to Slack or a CRM
Yep.
instead of a deliverable email address.
Yep, I'm a happy user of your B2B product, so I can vouch for that personally on this podcast. Very
Good.
cool technology, very useful for business owners that want to know who's visiting their landing pages.
Thank you
Um,
for the plug. I didn't even have to do it myself.
so what's interesting to me about what you said, Adam, is you were following the traditional social media advice of let's come up with the 3 or the 5 content pillars, whatever, and then let's post based on those content pillars. But what you actually found was after getting enough volume in, you realized, one of the posts was doing really well. It was about a very specific topic. So you just doubled down on that. And that was what drove a significant amount of your growth, which feels counterintuitive. I mean, it makes sense to me as I think about it, but most people trying to grow their personal brands today are probably trying to follow the first approach. Uh, these days, do you still just purely focus on B2B related content, very much transparent, raw, build in public? Is that like your main content strategy?
Let me tell you what I'm doing now. So, like, a thing that I think happened was I was writing a certain type of post, and this other guy, Justin Welsh, was training people to write posts in a certain way. Then ChatGPT and Claude showed up, and you ask ChatGPT and Claude to write a LinkedIn post, and they write a post very much in the style that Justin Welsh was training people, and it's similar to what I was doing, right? Um, so now that's all you see on LinkedIn. So, like, the posts that do really well for me now are just these kind of intellectual rants that are like almost run-on sentences. They're big paragraphs. They're the opposite of how I would have taught somebody to write on the internet. But it's pattern interrupt because it's the opposite of every single other LinkedIn post right now because everybody's just using ChatGPT. And by the way, some of them are not using it poorly, but still you're reading these long posts and you're like, oh, it's not this, it's that. It's not, it's this, it's this, it's this. It's like, it's just very clear to me. And I think it's becoming clear to other people. It just feels like everything else. So in terms of topics, so like raw build in public is still part of it. Like I don't really have that much that's interesting in my business to talk about. Like we're just kind of like doing well, but like we're not doing as well as like Gamma, for example, who's also like talking about being 100 million ARR with 50 people or something like that. So like, at the back half of last year, I did this AI stunt where I was like, we're going to leave for a week in August and AI is going to run our entire business. Like that was really good. It like I was able to hype it up and like get a lot of email addresses, sending people, how we did it or whatever. Um, like bootstrap versus VC is always a great topic for me because
Yep.
it's just a great topic for what in the open, when I was describing myself, it's like for for everyone except for like the 1% of people who have exited via the VC system, bootstrapping is way better. And like it's just a matter of when you learn that. So like it's a great debate between like the 25-year-olds who are still not at the point where they're stuck in this business and got no money out of it, and the VCs who have the 2 companies out of 100 in their portfolios that pay back the fund, and me, who's like, you'll have more money and power and freedom if you just like take the long and lonely road of bootstrapping. Eventually, yeah, whatever. So that's always a topic. I Yeah, VC's great at talking about itself. Like, there's not many people marketing this idea of bootstrapping besides like me and Jason Fried and a few other people. So that's a great one. Uh, Early days, I was talking about the future of go to market a lot. Like this whole, SDR models, predictable revenue models broken. Like that's played out. It's already happened. Like SalesLoft itself doesn't even have an SDR team anymore, right? So it's sort of whatever. But like, I like brand as a topic, like I don't talk about it a ton, but just like if you talk about posting on LinkedIn, it does well because it's the platform and everyone's there to like try to, like I don't know. I'm kind of reaching, building public still a significant part of it. And I like sort of share thoughts about, different, uh, uh, but it's like, to me, it's just kind of all about the story and like the emotional journey of this. Like if I
Mm.
do like a monthly recap, which I haven't done for a while because, you know, the value of them I think goes down as more people do them and like my business is just doing well. That's like the least exciting thing ever. It's like
Not
they
a
want
bad
to see
problem
you
to have.
either. Yeah, yeah, but like they want to either see like, oh, like we're Clay, we're like worth 5 billion and we were worth 2 billion 2 months ago. Like, oh my God. Or Gamma, like we were at zero and now we're at 100 million and I don't even know what to do. It's so amazing. Or it's like we were at 100 million and now we're at zero and like I'm gonna fire everybody and like all that shit. It's like just like, yeah, like we're like just crushing EBITDA growth. People are like yawn, like it's just not exciting. So I've kind of stopped doing it. But when I was doing it, it was much less about like, one of my competitors is like, we hired 6 people and like we added this department and like we started this and it would be much more about like an emotional journey for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would really try to take
Yeah.
people on a hero's journey, not even telling them the things that we did during the month, but like what it was like to be me during that month,
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, the post did much better than my competitor who's just, recounting the actions that his company took during the month. Like, no one cares, you know?
Right. And I think there's like a really insightful takeaway from that though, which is there's only one person that can talk about what it was like for you specifically to go through the past month. And
Yeah.
so even if a lot of your followers aren't, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that are bootstrapping businesses, but not everyone is bootstrapping a business at the scale that you are. A lot of people just are curious about what it's like being inside your
Yeah,
head. And so
totally.
you can't really, your competitor can't compete with that. He can't say the exact same thing
No,
because I don't know what's
he
going
should
on in his head.
try, but he is not yet aware enough that that's what people want to read. Like he should be doing that. He's just not. Because as you're alluding to, he would be swimming in his own pond at that point, in a in a subject matter that people care about, right? Like we do care about, it's like kind of like what's the definition of philosophy? It's like something like how do I live in the world, right? And like, uh, if I'm sharing my emotional journey, then like part of that is passing on that knowledge, right? Like, here's what I'm kind of doing and how it's the experience of it, right? Like, here's what I got going on, and here's the like resulting emotional experience. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's good content, and I think if you're posting on any social media, like you should keep in mind that that is probably what people care about more than anything else. Like, what is it like to be you? You know, I think that's my view, you know, and I'm probably one of the only people like posting in B2B that has that view of what the most valuable content to people is about. I haven't really had this discussion before, but like, um, I don't read much of other people's stuff, but I couldn't imagine anyone else standing here saying that like I put out a monthly update that has nothing to do with what our company did, and it's like all about my personal experience, but it's like framed as like a company update. Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a breath of fresh air, though, hearing you say that, because a lot of people in B2B marketing take that other approach, right? Very tactical, very like dry, very, methodical. And nothing wrong with that, but I think it just doesn't really stand out as much as it does when, say, it's coming from you. And that kind of leads me to the next question, which is, how has your personal brand or just posting on LinkedIn impacted the businesses that you've built?
Well, look, man, it's 100% of the funnel of RB2B, which I started under 2 years ago, and is currently almost at 8 million ARR, and we have 3 people working on it. That's very quantitative in the nature of that. It is a quantitative result. Qualitatively, it's hard for me to even describe the impact that the reach has. Like, I don't go to many industry events, but if I go to an industry event, people will walk up to me and talk to me without even saying their name, as if we were talking yesterday. No idea who these fucking people are. Zero, right? Like, I called an agency that I do some work with, whose wife or her girlfriend, his girlfriend owns a little jewelry business. And she's like, "Who are you talking to?" He's like, "Adam Robinson." She pulls up her phone and she was listening to my podcast in Costa Rica. She's not even B2B, right? So like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? I don't know this, but like, I'm pretty sure I could talk to most people in SaaS just based on the fact that I probably have a bigger following than most other people. And, people kind of like 3/4 love it, 1/4 hate what I talk about, you know? It kind of makes your whole, it, it's like this other guy described it really well. A lot of the like, so one part of your business is closing deals. And like, I have this amazing PLG funnel coming from it. So it's like really easy to justify keeping it going when you can see the revenue, right? But then there's every other part of your business. And like, I'm talking like recruiting, investors, partnerships, like, events, like all this other stuff. Having a large and respected personal brand creates a pull rather than a push in all of those other areas. Um, and when people have not posted and they start and they even get a little traction by coming alive on the platform, and I say before they started, it just opens doors that you didn't even know existed. Like, that's what they come back and tell me. The ones that keep doing it, they're like, now I totally understand what you're talking about. So yeah, I
100%.
spend basically a day a week on content. I record one YouTube video, I have one live webinar / workshop. I talk to my LinkedIn creative director. I talk to my Twitter ghostwriter. I use a ghostwriter for Twitter because I just like I don't have the capacity to try to go dominate that right now. And then I try to write a couple LinkedIn posts, and that's Tuesday. So I do internal meetings Monday, content on Tuesday, marketing meetings on Wednesday morning, and then the rest of the week is sort of like I'll write a couple LinkedIn posts and do whatever, and try to keep a non-cluttered schedule the rest of the week. And that's kind of how I've been rolling. And I could do that indefinitely, even if like, I kind of feel guilty because the paid user of RB2B is such a small percentage of the reach of my content, because it's like, you need web traffic. So like, if I had a cold email app, like instantly, those people don't need, on day one of the business, you start firing cold emails out, right? Like, So you need web traffic, which like eliminates probably like 60% of my audience. And then there's this other problem where it's US only and like my audience is international. And past a certain point, you like graduate out of our B2B and like need more sophisticated tools. So it's like a really narrow band of my audience that that use my content, but still it's building power that can be used in another way at some point. And I'm, generating a ton of profit off of it. So like, I don't know. I'm going to keep doing it.
Totally.
Long story short. It has worked out very well for me. You know,
So you mentioned a little bit about your system or the approach that you take to content. It sounds like Tuesdays are largely where you write a lot of your content, and then you
yeah. And by
maybe
the way,
a few posts later on the week.
yeah. And by the way, the LinkedIn course that I made last year, I sent you in the chat, like put it in the comments of this. It's on my YouTube channel. It's great. It's kind of all my thoughts at once. But yes, Tuesdays are content days. I try to leave the meeting with my LinkedIn creative director with 5 different ideas that I can sit down with the next Tuesday morning. And if I don't like one, I'll write another one. And it's a fully fleshed out hook in the main idea of the post so that I can just sit down and like, sort of let it flow. Right.
And are you writing these like purely just straight out of your brain, or are you like bouncing it off of like Claude or something? Like, what's your
Dude,
process?
I try, so one of the best webinars I've ever seen is a Greg Eisenberg and Nick Case, How to Write with AI. I can send you this too. It's on YouTube. I watch that and it's like, I want to write that way, but it doesn't really work for me when I do. It's just kind of easier for me to not write with AI. And I think, when I started creating content, I was like, I'm going to try to maximize my humanity. Like, I see the value of being the only person not writing with AI now, and trying to make it look as much like a non-AI post as humanly possible. I have had some success, but I have not changed my habit in taking a post and being like, punch up this hook. Give me 10 other options. And then like some of the stuff from some of the other hooks I would use, But like, I don't know. I think it feels a certain way when I don't use AI at all that is lost when I do use AI. And I do believe that probably 90% of the posts on LinkedIn are almost entirely AI generated at this point.
I think that's an accurate statement.
Yeah.
And
So it's like if I'm really good at this and really understand the game and I'm the only guy who's not using AI, I don't know. I'm going to run with that for this year,
Yeah. I mean, I think you're onto something. Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO mentioned also that in some of his content, he'll even add like a little typo because
Yeah.
it makes people realize that, oh, a human wrote this instead of just another AI. So it's funny how things have shifted to the complete opposite end of the spectrum now, because the AI content just reads as very similar. And then the pattern interrupt is when you write it in a very non-optimized way.
Yep. It is interesting.
That's fascinating. Well, Adam, this has been a really interesting conversation. Before we let you go, though, is there anything else you want to share with the audience that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, one last idea. So this works so well for me in terms of dollars flowing through the system, actual deals closed, because I am the sort of ideal, or the what I am presenting on LinkedIn is the idealized future self of my audience, who is also to a large extent the buyer of my product. One of the conflicts that I had internally when I was trying to write for a Shopify store owner is that I'm not a Shopify store owner. That doesn't mean you shouldn't post on LinkedIn for all of the other reasons that I said, right? Like it will help you with recruiting and investors and like all of that shit. If you can, and it's just like unbelievably valuable to understand from a technical standpoint at some point how to create organic social media content. You can do a million things with that, right? But if I were not selling to early stage SaaS founders and marketers, I would not be spending a day a week on content. Yeah. If I were selling to construction, if I had a construction vertical SaaS, I might be posting on LinkedIn once a week or whatever, but I would not I would not have dedicated a year to being the absolute best at this, knowing what I know now. So keep that in mind. If your prospects are on LinkedIn and do their jobs on LinkedIn, you have a huge amount of incentive to try to become world-class for literally dollars in the bank reason. If that is not your audience, then I think take my course. It'd probably help you to post once a week for these other tangential regions. You don't need to be world-class. There are better ways, higher leverage ways to spend your time. That's my parting thought.
Thanks for coming on, Adam. That was incredible.
You're welcome.